Well, hello, good evening, and good night to wherever you might be in the world. Ooh, that's some good tea. Omega Snake coming to you here live from 3:52 in the morning. Baby Snake happens to be awake right now, and he refuses to go to sleep, so I'm up with him. So I decided to make a little tier list video. I promised, to do this, and I want to do this actually. We have a lot of different ideas in the guild right now about what great buildings we should be leveling, and you know, I think some older ideas are prevailing still. And well, I should say this is how I would do it. I'm not, of course, the be-all, end-all authority on everything, but I've been playing this for 7 years, and I think some people like my style, of play. So this is how I would do it if I was building a city, right? Um, you know, you are by no means required to do what I'm about to share, but I think that this is good wisdom. Okay. So what's a tier list, right? And why do we do this? So a tier list is basically, a list of power rankings of a set of items, right? Um, what is the S tier? The top of the list, the S tier is basically your Cadillac, your top of the line, super great building, right? That you really can't play the game without. So the S tier category is basically anything that cannot be replicated, or it does what it does so well that you would be nuts not to have that. Your A tier is the next one down. It means that it's really good. Think of it like an A in like an academic setting, right? You can't go wrong with this building, but there's other things that might be able to do what it does, but what it does is still very good, but just not S tier quality. Next is your B rank, which is kind of like a B in academic setting, still very good, very solid, you know, maybe a couple of deficiencies here and there, maybe not as efficient, but still a good workhorse, right? It's going to get the job done. Your C tier is again like a C in academic setting, meaning it's not that great, maybe it was better at one point, but it's experienced, some power creep. Um, what do I mean by power creep? Let's define that. So power creep is basically, you can think of that as planned or maybe even forced obsolescence, right? Where something was good at one point, but because there's new tier material coming out, new ages, new events, the stuff from 2016, definitely 2018, maybe even 2021, 2022, is that stuff is definitely not as good as the more modern stuff, right? So that's what we mean by power creep. It's your planned or forced obsolescence. Something becoming obsolete, um, and we're better off replacing it with newer, more improved stuff. All right. So anyway, that's your C tier, right? Then your D tier is like a D again in an academic setting where that stuff is just not as good anymore. Um, you don't want this stuff in your city, or it should be on top of your list to replace as soon as possible. Finally, your F tier is absolute junk. Either it was good before, or maybe not even good, but it was average before, and now it's just not worth building, or it was just never good when it was current content, and you should never have it, right? And I guess finally, you got the X tier, which we're going to call a situational, group. This is stuff that you might need for a little while, depending on your era, your plan, your progression, and but you don't want it forever, right? You want to replace these items eventually. Hold on. Ooh, that's a really good tea. My wife makes this amazing tea. Anyway, yeah, little baby snake is just over there hanging out, staring at me every now and then. Uh, my goodness, man, you gotta go to sleep. All right, it's 3:56 in the morning. Anyway, So yeah, so that's your exterior. It is stuff that's pretty good for a certain time, you know, but it's not something that you want forever. All right. So yeah, so without further ado, let's just get to this list, right? In Forge of Empires, there are 46 great buildings, right? All starting from the uh, the the No era all the way up to the modern Titan era. Okay, and along the way, every era, including the No era, will have uh, between 1 and 3 great buildings in it, right? Most have 2. Um, there's a couple that have 3, and there's a few that have 1. So let's get to it. So the first No era building is the observatory. The observatory has gotten actually more powerful since the end of GVG. That's versus, right? Um, it absolutely has gotten more powerful because, oops, what am I doing? Because it now has blue stats on it, right? Which is very useful for certain settings. It'll be more powerful once the next blue map comes out for Battlegrounds, right? Can you play the game without it? Yeah, you definitely could, but should you? No. We're gonna call it A tier, right? It's definitely a strong building. It's small. It's fast to level. It's definitely worth having. All right. Next is the Oracle of Delphi. It's also a no age specific building. You get it at the very beginning. It's the first free building that you get. It helps really much on the supplies, but by the time the player is probably, I would say, in colonial era, they should think about replacing it, right? I actually just started a city on D just to kind of see what's possible and see what the early game is like again. And yeah, I could definitely see where it's useful, but at the same time, it's not going to last forever. So that right there is an X tier, also known as situational. Next is the Temple of Relics. That's the GE building, the Expedition building. So the Expedition building was cool for a long time because it gave you, cool little items. But, now in the modern era, in 2024, almost 2025, who needs more victory towers, right? Or terrace farms, Mm. So, um, if you want to build up your antiques dealer, I think that's what it's called, right? The antiques dealer. Let's see. Yeah, the antiques dealer. I can talk, I swear. Um, if you want to build up your antiques dealer, you have this, right? But you don't really, and by build up, I mean like get your points, your medals, and I guess it's coins and gems, right? Um, you want to have that, but after a while, you really don't need it anymore, and you can delete it. Next is the Tower of Babel. Um, it was never really good, even when it was current content. But you know, it's definitely not something you want to have in your city. I mean, it gives good in population, but there's other things that give goods in population, right? So it's your first F tier building. Okay, next we are now in Iron Age. We are now to the Statue of Zeus. Super small, super cheap, super fast to level. Right? There's nothing not to hate about it. Um, are there other things that give attack and defense? Yes, but there is nothing more efficient than this building right here. So, well, there's other things that are more efficient, but there's nothing that are as fast to get you attack. So your Zeus becomes your first S tier building. All right, don't leave home without it. Next, we have the Colosseum. I think this is a no-brainer for almost all players. You don't want this, guys. Please don't have one of these in your city, or we're going to have a conversation. All right. Maybe encourage you to move to a guild that understands or doesn't mind that you have these. All right. Next is your Lighthouse of Alexandria. Okay, this is an interesting building. It gives goods and improves your rate of supply gain, right? This is definitely a situational building. Um, Great to have, when you're building up your supply infrastructure, right? Um, but by the time a player gets to like industrial, maybe even progressive, you don't want this no more. There's other stuff that you can pick up, and by that point, your supply should really be, humming along. Um, I would build this, to level 1, right? Just, get it out of the mud, out of the sticks, um, and leave it at level 1, and then, a fill percentage, and then after that, just go ahead, and axe it, right? Um, yeah, there you go. Next, you have I think we're in early Middle Ages now, um, the Castillo de Alcan, I think it's called, right? Definitely kind of an awkward shape, 6x4. Not really that, you know, um, cool looking, I guess. Looks kind of dirty. But it has attack, it has defense on it, and it's not that expensive to level. Um, Not the greatest thing that gives attack, but it gives attack and defense. So definitely a solid B. Next is the Galata Tower, right? This is another situational building. I would actually say it's better than the Alexandria, right? Um, yeah, actually, maybe it's even better than the Oracle. So, the Galata Tower, it blocks people from plundering your city. If you're in the early eras, you'll get a lot of plunderers. Yeah, or if you can't collect on time, right? But once you figure out the schedule, and it gives you goods, by the way, too, a decent amount of goods for a small print. But once you have other buildings that grant you goods, or event buildings, and you can collect on time, you really don't need the Galata, right? But it's not a bad building to have, but eventually when space becomes really, really tight, you may want to think about nixing it. Okay. Next is the Hagia. The Hagia used to be a lot better, right? But it was always very big and very inefficient. The rate of return. But I guess it was cheap to level though. But it was just for its size, it wasn't worth its value, right? So I would have called it a C tier building, maybe back in 2016. But now that there's so many things that can forge points, it's been, the power creep on it has been serious. So you definitely don't want to build these anymore. If you have them beyond level 80, then maybe it's worth, well, I mean, because at level 80, it only gives you 40 forge points, right? That's definitely not worth holding on to. There's other things that will give you more than 40 forge points for a much smaller print. So I would call this definitely an F tier building. You never want this, guys. Even if it's level 100, I wouldn't hold on to it, guys. It's even level 120, I wouldn't hold on to it. I would definitely go ahead and hit the delete button on this baby. It's it was good for a time, but that time has passed. Next is the what is this thing called again? The Notre Dame, right? The Notre Dame was never good, even when it was current content. There's no reason to ever build the Notre Dame. It's definitely an F tier building. Next is the St. Mark's. The St. Mark's was at some point maybe a high C or a low B building. It brought in coins, it brought in goods. Coins could be used, to make forge points. And people had it, right? Or goods were hard to come by. But nowadays, there's so many better buildings that give goods. It's just not worth building. So I would have called it a C or maybe a D minus a long time ago. But now in 2024, well, halfway to 2025, it's definitely an F tier building. We're gonna put it, yeah, I think right there is fair, right after the Hagia. So next we have the CDM, Castillo de Aachen, I think it's called, right? Castillo de Aachen is, it's a nice little 5x5, right? So it fits in most little spots. Um, and it gives forge points, it gives attack and defense. Um, I would call this an A minus, maybe a B plus building. For now, we'll put it in the top of B, right? But we'll revisit at the end, see if that's where it really truly belongs. Okay, next we have the St. Basil's. St. Basil's, I see some people building this thing, you know. Gives blue attack and defense. But do you really need it? You know, the blue map isn't out yet. Maybe it'll be more important once the blue map comes out, you know, maybe on the level of, you know, the CDM, but right now it's not, right? And event buildings are coming out with so much attack and defense on them for blue numbers that, you know, there's better things you can spend your forge points on, guys. For right now, we're going to call it a D building, but maybe a C building once the next map comes out, but for right now, it's definitely a D. So if the St. Basil's is a D, then the Deal Castle is definitely enough, right? It's a bigger, fatter, you know, not as good to level building as the Basil's, so that's definitely going to be an F building. We're going to put that right after the St. Mark's. All right, next is the this is the Frauenkirche of Dresden, right? I believe I pronounced that right. Frauenkirche. All right. So the Frauenkirche is, I used to have it. At one point it was really good. Sorry, I had to cough there. It was really good, right? Well, I'm not going to say really good. It was okay, right? It gave goods, but it was never efficient. But you know, the 5x5 size makes it so that it, you know, fits in little, you know, cubby holes really well, you know, right next to the CDM and stuff like that, right? But it has experienced some serious, you know, power creep loss, you know, some obsolescence. So it's definitely now an F tier building, and it's sad for me to even say that, right? But it's true, right? It was one of my favorites, but now it's definitely F tier, right next to the Hagia. All right, next is the Capitol. We are now in industrial. The Capitol was never any good, right? There was better buildings than it, almost from the get-go. Please don't build a Capitol, guys. I promise you there's better things to give you population. There's event buildings that give you population, right? Like more than twice what this thing ever could. So that definitely goes in the F tier after the Deal Castle. Next is the Royal Albert Hall. The Royal Albert Hall is basically a bigger, less efficient, and more expensive version of the Lighthouse of Alexandria, right? So you don't want this at all. You know, it wasn't good ever. So it goes after the Deal Castle, actually, because the Deal Castle might become important one day. You know, we keep on hearing these stories about that they're going to improve, you know, the great buildings at some point, but we have to work with what we have right now, right? And what we have right now is what we have. So I don't think the Deal Castle would ever be good unless if they do something crazy on it, you know. But anyway, that was for Albert Hall. Okay, now we're up to Progressive Era, PE, and here is where it's going to probably get a little spicy, right? So we have the Chateau of Frontenac, I guess it's pronounced, right? We'll just say Chateau, so I don't sound crazy. The Chateau, a lot of people swear it's an S tier building, but is it really? I mean, how many of us really do recurring quests, right? Is it still valuable? Oh yeah, you know, it's still good for, you know, improving your rewards, right? which is really nice. Whenever you go up to a new age, you can get diamonds. So, in fact, it produces diamonds for you, every now and then. Whenever or like actually, it produces diamonds for you the first one time on a recurring quest, right? And then after that first time, it produces, I believe it's metals. So, there's something else that produces diamonds, and we'll get to that, right? But yeah, this is a C tier building now, guys. Believe it or not, the chateau is not as powerful anymore. It has experienced some very serious power creep. And now, what does C mean again? It means it's still useful to you. It means don't go delete your chateau. Please don't do that, right? But is it something you should really put a lot of effort into right now? Unless if you're under level 60, sure. But by the time you're between 60 and 80, you're good, guys. You don't really need to be one of these folks that has a level 200 chateau. Come on. There's other ways to get better than the chateau. So C tier. Okay, the next one is probably going to be the most controversial, and that's the Traz. Back in the days of versus, GVG, the Traz. Oh, did my music stop? Oh no. Okay. The Traz was essential, right? Who remembers being under 50 rogues, right? And praying and hoping for a double collection before GVG reset, right? Oh God, I get 2 Traz collections before reset. Yay! I'm at rogues, Yeah, that may or may not have been me every week, right? So, but nowadays there's so many things that give you units, Like even this event, there's a building that gives you 30 units, I think it is. That's bananas, Um, so yeah, the Traz is definitely feeling some power creep, guys. It used to be an S tier building without a doubt. It used to be S tier, especially if you were a GVG player, But now it's right there next to the Chateau for a C tier building. There's some players that are even deleting their Traz. That I've seen some, big names, top 10, 20, 30 players deleting their Traz. I'm not there yet. I'm not saying you should be there yet. I'm not. Please don't delete your Traz. All right, but um, it's gotten some power creep. Um, while you're working on your attack and defense, yeah, it's important to have a Traz because you're going to lose units in battlegrounds, right? So have a good Traz. Maybe get it to 60, maybe 80, maybe even 100, right? But beyond 100, maybe even 120, I wouldn't say that's the wisest use of your time right now, right? There's other things you can level to make your troops stronger, okay? Or other buildings that you can have to have recruiters in your city, right? All right, we are now to the modern era. If you notice, the next is the atomium. I'm probably butchering that because I'm tired, but we're going to call it the atom, just so you guys don't think I'm stupid, right? But the atom, as you can see, it's the only one with a kind of a white background. I found the real life atom, so I had a picture of it, right? And everything else I got off of the web, so it has a black background. Anyway, I digress. The atom gives guild goods, right? And I was explaining this to Devil Dog Skipper, right, today, or actually I guess yesterday. Think of the atom as kind of like this giant, heavy, big, awkward machine gun, right? That you have to carry to battle, right? You got to put this thing on your back. It's like carrying a freaking boulder or like a rock, or like carrying a bear on your back. Okay, it's gonna hurt. Your hips, your lower back is gonna feel it. It takes up a lot of space. It's a 6x7. It covers a lot of things. It's kind of goofy looking, right? But my God, you're gonna be so glad you got it when we're facing a determined opponent in Battlegrounds, where and where we have some really crappy, or really expensive tiles with goods, like a 5,000 goods call on a 3 camp tile, that's going to be nuts. That's highly competitive, like a, ring 1 or ring 2 tile, ugh, that's going to hurt, So the Atom, guys, it's not the greatest, but you know what? It's still useful. It's a solid C tier building, okay? Um, Maybe a year ago, I would say it was a solid B, but yeah, there's stuff coming out with good goods on it, especially with the advent of QI now. The Neo Colossus comes loaded with DAT, DAT, um, direct to, oh my goodness, what's the acronym again? Um, Daily automatic tribute to treasury. Boom, I got it. All right, so once you get yourself about 4 to 6 um, Neo Colossi at the max level, you could probably start to think about deleting your Atom. Okay, maybe even 3 of those Colossi. Once you got 3, if you add an Atom, I'm not going to blink twice if you delete your Atom guys at all. So yeah, let's do that. 3 Colossi equals a deleted Atom. All right, so you guys can reclaim that space for whatever you want to use it for. Okay, but for now, it's definitely a C tier building. All right, that's seeing a decline in its usefulness. But for now, it's definitely that big machine gun that we want to hold on to. Okay. Next, we have the Space Needle. We are in modern. All right, it was never good, not even when it was current content. Please don't ever build one. F tier for sure. Next is the Cape. Cape, I think this is a no-brainer. This one was good for a while. Um, it gives 1 good per level. I'm sorry, 1 forge point per level. But what you're spending on it to get those forge points is not really that great, right? So, but I guess what you're building is capacity, not necessarily investment, if that makes sense. Definitely has seen some serious obsolescence, some power creep. Solid D tier. All right, if you have one, at level 80, actually at level 100 or higher, actually at level 80 or higher, we'll say maybe it's worth holding on to, for another year, right? But here, I'll give you an example. In the last Panda event, the I believe the Gold League prize was the Panda Serene Temple thing, right? Where it was like a 4x5 thing that gave 80 forge points, so the same size as the cape, but it gave 80 forge points and then loaded with other stuff, right? I think attack, maybe that, right? Clearly a direct replacement for the cape, right? I happen to miss that thing by about 100 points, but we won't go there, but it is what it is, right? So yeah, I was Gold League the entire time until the last day, and then I got knocked right out, so that sucked. But anyway, the cape, a lot of obsolescence. I'm even going to say probably in 6 months or by the next Panda event for sure. The cape is going to be an F tier building, but for now, solidly in D. Okay, Habitat, we're still in modern. No, actually, this is post-modern now. Sorry. Was never good. Not even when it was current content. It's just another thing that gives population better than the other population building. The capital, F tier. Please don't have it. We're now contemporary. The innovation tower gives forge points and population, I think, or something like that. Definitely used to be better. Used to be a solid B tier building. But it gives one forge point for every other level, right? And it was easy to level, but it's seen some serious obsolescence, right? Yeah, no, guys, it's right next to the Hagia. It gives the same forge points as the Hagia per level, but more expensive to level, and so yeah, it's definitely F tier. I'm gonna say top of the F tier, but it's definitely F tier. Okay, Lotus Temple, never good even when it was current, so that's really a bad building. Maybe just a step in front of the Tower of Babel. Truce Tower. Okay, we're now in Tomorrow Era. Truce Tower. It's interesting, right? And it's gotten more powerful since the advent of the 8-all button. So what it does is for every time you aid somebody, you get a chance to get a good from the era of the item that you aided, right? So if you're like in a lower era, or maybe even up to future, and you want to start collecting goods, for a higher era, it's a good building to have, especially if you have a lot of space age players in your friends list, right? Would I keep it forever? No. Once you start hitting probably Mars, maybe even before then, maybe even like Virtual Future, maybe even, yeah, like Virtual Future, I'd probably drop this, right? Maybe even well before then. Um, but definitely has a usefulness, right? So it goes into the situational X tier. In fact, I would say it's the top of the X tier, right? It has the longest life of the X tiers. Next is the Voyager. This was good before the Galata Tower came out because it gave you bonuses, Um, it gave goods and it gave you a bonus to plunder, I think it was, but no longer it's any good, guys. In fact, it was never really great when it was out. I definitely wouldn't build this, guys. Yeah, so it's going to definitely go into the F tier. Okay, next is the Arc. The Arc, obviously, we all know what the Arc does. There's nothing that can do what the Arc does, and that alone makes it an S tier building, right? Because it is simply the most powerful in its class, and it's in a class by itself. Nothing gives you a boost to forge points that you collect. Its other bonus, where it gives you guild goods, DAT. That, there's other buildings that give that, but its first power is incredible, right? So S tier for sure. We're in future now, by the way. The other future building is the Rainforest Project. It was never good when it was current. It gives you a chance to get blueprints, but there's 75 ways to send it to get prints, right? And it gives goods too, but it was never really that great. Expensive, definitely F tier. All right, now we're in Arctic. Next is the Arctic Orangey, we're going to call it. All right, we're going to call it the AO because, all right, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. There is nothing that can do what the AO can do. There's nothing else that gives you critical strike. That's a building. So for that reason alone, it's an S tier building. Okay, right behind the Arc. Yeah, you need it, guys. You need it, especially in battlegrounds. Right. Get that baby to level 134. Give yourself a 40% critical strike chance, and watch yourself, get to really high attrition levels. All right. Of course, you want to get it higher eventually, but 134 is a very good target. Okay. Next is the Gaia statue. Interesting looking building. It's like a Polynesian themed, building, I guess. It was never good even when it was current. Nice to look at, but it was never really good. Definitely an F tier building. Okay. You guys have heard me talk about the Seed Vault a lot. Okay. I'm a firm believer in the Seed Vault. Seed Vault does everything that mostly everything that the Chateau can do, but better, right? So, and easier is what I should say. So the Seed Vault, and again, just like the Truce Tower, it's gotten more powerful ever since they came out with the 8-all button, right? That's good tea. It gives you a chance to get goods and a bunch of other goodies, right? But its most interesting feature is it gives you a chance to get diamonds, right? It's the only diamond producing great building. right? Not including like wishing wells and all that, but from great buildings, it produces diamonds, right? That nerd guy on YouTube has a video out where he says that it can give you 8,000 diamonds a year. That's not my experience so far, but mine is lower level than his. About 6,100 diamonds a year, right? It is what I'm averaging, and it, and honestly, the goods is the bigger feature in my opinion too. Um, on the last stage, when I was really kind of examining it, I ended up the last stage with 300,000 of every good from the seed vault alone, right? And that was, and all I was doing was pressing the 8 button every day, guys, on the hood, the guild, and my friends list, and the goods just came in, you know. So yeah, it's basically, it can do everything that the chateau can do basically, but better. Personally, I would put it on S tier, to be completely honest, is where I would put it. But the truth is that you can get away without it, right? Um, there's other buildings that can do what it can do, you know, the chateau. There's other buildings that give goods, you know. It does give diamonds, but it's not unique in that way because you could have a diamond farm and, you know, and cover your diamonds that way too, you know. So, but definitely A tier, without a doubt, solid A tier, you know. Um, it's probably immune to obsolescence, to be honest, like the AO and the ARC, but you know, still A tier. Okay. Atlantis Museum, not any good. Um, Too big, too expensive. It's cool to look at, but probably better than the Reinforced Project, F tier. Blue Galaxy is another one that you could even call an S tier building, but you know, um, what it does is it basically, it's your Federal Reserve Bank in your city is what it is. Okay, what I mean by that is that any fragment that you want, you can have a 70% chance to double the chance of getting those fragments, right? So if you're hitting the Thunder Drake with this thing, you know, you can basically create another level 2 Thunder Drake, you know, pretty much quickly, right? It cuts the time in exactly half because, you know, the doubling effect. To give you an idea of what's possible, right? If you look at my city right now, as of today, August 4th, 2024, I have 7 of those dragon boats, right? The red ones. Now, I ended that event, which was last month's event, with 5 of them, right? Well, 5 and, you know, like 3 fragments for the next one, right? So what I've been doing is I've been using my Blue Galaxy to farm the fragments for those boats, you know, for about a month now. And in that month, I've created 2 boats. I now have 7 boats, right? And they're awesome. Those are some really good boats, and that's what I've been using, you know, the Blue Galaxy for. So it basically, like I said, it prints money, you know. Um, there's nothing else that can do that other than time itself, right? So in that sense, it's not really an S tier building, but man, it's close. It's like an S minus, right? If that makes sense, or an A plus, I guess you could say. So it's an A building, but definitely, you know, it's in the conversation to be an S building, right? But I would say that it's definitely better than the OBS. Not as good as the Seed Vault, but yeah, it's solidly A building. Okay. Next one's a little controversial. Is the Kraken. I see a lot of you guys and gals leveling this thing, right? Guys, it is a less efficient, slower, and more expensive version of the Cape, right? And you see what the Cape is. The Cape's already D tier. All right. It gives 80% of its level towards forge points, right? So if you're level 100, it gives you 80 forge points. It has a cool little effect in animation, I guess. Its effect is that it gives you a very high chance to remove 1 enemy from the opposing force, you know, at the start of a battle. But that would, you know, if you save it, like, you know, when you have high attrition, or, you know, on the later stages of G5 or something like that, you know, you could, I guess, use it that way. But if you're doing that, then what are you doing also? You're also delaying when you're collecting it, which makes its forge points less efficient, right? So you're making it less efficient by using it for its most efficient, effect, if that makes sense, right? So in other words, guys, it's not that good. Okay. It was good when Oceanic was current content, right? It was interesting, right? And there wasn't anything else that had or it could do what it could do at the time. But now that we've seen it in action, yeah, it's not that great. So I would definitely call this. Oh goodness, I would almost call this an F tier building, right? But because it's forge points, that are better than 50%, like the Hagia, we're gonna call it D tier. But this is really like a D minus, okay, or F plus. Okay. Next is the Himeji Castle. One of the most cool looking buildings, right? Like I want to visit there, or I want to model my house after it, or at least get a poster of it, right? But for my man cave here. But at first it was interesting. It was cool, The spoils of war, I guess, were kind of cool for GVG players, but you get the spoils of war like about what, once every 3 months, It gives you forge points, goods, all that good stuff, but there's other things that give you forge points and goods, right? Definitely seen some serious power creep. We're gonna put it at a D tier, right? If you have one, at the max level, level 91, I think it is, sure, hold on to it, but definitely start planning on it, being replaced. Okay. The other virtual future building we had was the terracotta, right? Terracotta, same shape as the COA. It gives blue and red stats. So, worth holding on to. More expensive than the COA, but still it's blue and red. So solid B tier. It's a workhorse. Wouldn't prioritize it over other things. But you basically level it up, level 60, 80, 100. Forget about it. Next, now we're in Mars. And we have the Stargazer. Stargazer is one of those buildings that are useful, I think, at lower eras, or if you're doing a lot of negotiating. Definitely useful for, say, future era, right? Because it would give you previous age goods. And Titan goods are hard to come by if, you made the critical mistake of not having a seed vault, right? When you were in Tomorrow era, right? But yeah, so situational, right? X tier. Put it down if you need one, right, for a time, but it's gonna have a limited lifespan. I'm gonna put it probably right before the Galata Tower, right? Okay. Next is the Space Carrier. That's the only one that we had for Saab, for Asteroid Belt. Interesting building. It's the same as the Himeji Castle, but for negotiating, right? And it has the other power that it gives you a boost to your special goods, right? So like really excellent to have when you're in Arctic Future and to collect the Promethium and the Orichalcum in Oceanic, right? But definitely a limited lifespan. By the time that you get to Mars, you probably don't want this thing no more, right? Or maybe like at the end of Mars, you don't want this thing no more. You want to replace it. So situational. Better than the Stargazer, maybe better than the Temple of Relics too, but not as good as the Truce Tower. Okay. Now the music stopped, didn't it? Yeah, sure did. Okay. Next is the Virgo Project. All right. A worse version with less of a chance, a bigger hole in the ground than the Kraken, right? Kraken's already a D, so this makes it definite F tier, right? Don't need this, guys. There's several different ways to get its same effect, alright? Just have a high critical strike, high attack, and you're good to go. Don't waste your space or time on this, please. we're going to call this right there, before the Royal Albert. Actually, before the God statue too. Okay. Flying Island was never good, even when it was current content. Yep, it's going to go right into the F tier. Probably right there. Okay. The AI core. AI core gives guild goods. It has that good shape. You know, that 5x5 even is a really good shape, right? Because it's small enough that it fits in a lot of places, and you know, very compact, right? Expensive to level, but it gives you a boost to 2 special goods, I think it is, right? So definitely worth having. I would say it's better than the atom, but for sure. We're gonna call it, well, now with QI, you know, and the fact that you can get so much that from your Neo Colossus, I wouldn't call it B tier. I would call it C tier, maybe C minus, actually C plus. This is actually a tough one. Yeah, we'll say B tier for now, right? But we'll revisit that. Okay. All right, that leaves us with just the 3 Titan buildings, right? So we'll go through this real quick. So the Titan buildings, you have the Centaurus, right? Highly efficient, compact size at 4x4. It gives you +4. Its main feature, it gives you +4 attack and defense per level, right? So that's 8 times faster than a Zeus. Okay. So you already see where the Zeus is, and what do I mean by that, right? So the Zeus gives you a +1 every other level, right? And the Centaurus gives you +4 every level. So that means that to equal 1 level of the Centaurus, you would need to level a Zeus 8 times, right? So the Zeus is far more expensive in that way. But still, you know, it takes guild, or I'm not guild goods. It takes Titan goods. So in order to have this, you really need a seed vault to kind of have that coming in. But definitely S tier. It's better than the Zeus. Definitely not better than the AO though. So yeah, solidly an S tier building. Next is the Hydra. The Hydra is +3 blue and red, I believe it is. Yeah, blue and red, and it gives some other goodies, right? So very efficient, +3. So not as good as the Centaurus for attacks. It's actually more expensive than Centaurus, I believe, as well. Solidly S tier building though. Finally, we have the Pegasus, which gives +2 forge points and +5 red stats per level, right? So very good. The most efficient, actually, out of the 3 on, its bonus to combat, but it's blue stats, right? So because it's blue stats, and blue stats are very limited in use right now, it's not S tier, right? It's not even A tier. But whenever the blue map comes out, maybe we'll revisit this, right? But for now, solidly B tier, right? I would say better than the AI core, definitely better than the Terracotta, but not better than the COA, because COA is red stats. So let's review this just to make sure we get everything we want. So in the S tier, that's the top of the line. We have the Arc, AO, Centaurus, Hydra, and Zeus. A tier, we have the Seed Vault, Blue Galaxy, and Observatory, right? Happy with that. B tier, we have the CDM, COA, Pegasus, Terracotta, and AI Core. C tier, I know, spicy controversy, right? We have the Chateau and the Traz and the Atom. Great buildings to have, nothing wrong with them, but they are seeing some obsolescence, right? Power creep. We'll say power creep. That sounds, like I'm not some sort of, snob. All right, we'll say power creep instead of obsolescence. Okay. All right. Um, sorry. Okay, dork mode. D tier. These are buildings that, so D tier and F, you really don't want these at all, right? So D tier, we got the Basils, Cape, Kraken, brain fart there, and Himeji Castle, right? All these were better at one point in their life, but now not so much, right? Maybe the Basils will become better when the blue mat comes out. Maybe it'll go to C, but right now, nah, you know. I think definitely by the next Panda event, the Cape and definitely the Kraken are no longer going to even be D tier. They're going to be subtly F tier, right? But we're not there yet. So right now they're in D. So for all of you that keep leveling your Kraken, just kind of keep this in mind, okay? The Himeji Castle is obviously, cool looking and all that, and it gives interesting rewards, but you get the same rewards from everywhere else, right? It's start looking at something to replace your Himeji with, all right? There's so many F tier to go through, we won't name them all, but you can see them here, right? We already named them. All of these, you don't need them in your city, actually from the St. Mark's and to the left, these right here, at one point were, C tier or maybe even D tier, right? But so, they would have been found in cities, plenty of them, but right now, no longer, right? If you have an Innovation Tower, a Hagia, a Frauenkirche, or a St. Mark's, you don't need them anymore, guys. Go and tear them down. And then everything from the Deal Castle on down was never really any good, right? So those should not be in your city. Finally, the X tier, which is the situational. These have a limited life in your city, right? They have more sunsets behind them than they have sunrises ahead of them, if that makes sense. Let me say that differently. They have more sunrises behind them than they have sunrises ahead of them. It's the best way to say it, right? They're good for a time, especially the Truce Tower, right? And the Space Carrier. Actually, every single one of them is good for a time, right? But that time is short, and you can replace them with other stuff soon enough. Okay. So there you have it, guys. That is the DJ Omega Snakes tier list for August 2024. All right. Hopefully this serves as a guide on, things that you can look at. Again, you don't have to do it this way if you don't want to. You can have your city full of F tier buildings if you want to, but maybe this isn't the right playstyle for you, that we're trying to accomplish here. So just kind of think about that. But you know what? I'm curious. Like, how would you guys do this, right? Put your comments in the video. Like, how would you arrange this? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know. I'm curious what you guys would think. All right, that's all I got for you. Yeah, baby snake fell asleep. So I'm out of here. Snake out.